Welcome to the next lesson, shipping by air or by sea. And here's what we'll be covering. Domestic versus international shipping, an overview of the entire shipping process, how to run this business from anywhere in the world. We'll go over a comparison of air versus sea and how to decide which is right for you. And then we'll talk about freight forwarders and inspection services. It's important to keep in mind that this lesson is only for importing products. If your manufacturer is in the same country as the Amazon marketplace that you'll be selling in, you're not importing, and you can simply use Amazon's own internal shipping service, and this will be covered in a later module. However, if your manufacturer is located in a different country as the Amazon marketplace you're selling in, you will need to have your products imported, and this lesson is for you. I put together the following graphic to show at a high level the entire importation process. And whether you're shipping by air or by sea, the process is still pretty much the same. It all starts with your supplier who manufactures your products. Then they get the products to the international port. And in this case, I'm considering the international port to be the port in your supplier's country. And it can either be an airport or a seaport. Then from there, the products are loaded onto a vessel, and it can be either an airplane or an ocean freighter. And then they travel across the ocean and finally arrive at the domestic port, which is the port in the country that you'll be selling in. And again, this can be an airport or a seaport. From there, the products are then delivered to some type of local prep location. This can be your home, it can be a freight forwarder's own warehouse, or an inspection and forwarding service that you've hired. Now, it's at this point that once the products look good, that you generate the shipping labels, either UPS or FedEx, from inside of your Seller Central account. Then the products are picked up and shipped off to Amazon's FBA warehouse. That's the entire process in a nutshell. Now keep in mind, your suppliers may tell you that you don't need this step, that they can do all of the prep for you, that you can simply email them the either UPS or FedEx shipping labels, or create a shipping label just for an entire pallet full of products, and then they'll have them shipped directly from the port to Amazon's warehouse. However, we do not recommend that, especially for your first 1 or 2 shipments. We definitely think that you should either do this step yourself to make sure that the products look good and that they get labeled correctly and shipped off to Amazon, or that someone you've hired, like a freight forwarder or an inspection service, does that as well. Later on, if you have a high level of confidence that your supplier really does know how to do that final step and to get your product straight from the port to Amazon's warehouse, then you can definitely give this a try. But for your first 1 or 2 shipments, we highly recommend that either you do this or a freight forwarder inspection service does that final prep before getting the products to Amazon's warehouse. One of the best things about this business is that it can be run from almost anywhere in the world. The entire process can be set up so that you never have to touch your products, other than just maybe the samples when you're launching and testing out a new product. Even when importing your products from China, you can have your products make their way all the way to Amazon's warehouses without you ever having to see them. The secret to simplifying this is to use something called a freight forwarder and also an inspection service, and we'll talk more about those later. Now, how you ship your products, by air or by sea, will depend upon the size, the weight, and the quantity that you're shipping. So how do you decide which to use? Well, if your product is small and light, so think of less than a pound, shipping by air is a possibility. If it's larger or heavier, you'll likely need to ship it by sea. And if you're not sure, simply get a quote and check both air and ocean for profitability. I like using the Freightos calculator tool to get both estimates and actual quotes because it makes it incredibly simple to compare different shipping methods and companies. And be sure to also ask your supplier for a recommendation on how to ship your products. They'll know based upon the type of product and the size you order what they think is the best method of shipping. Keep in mind that there may be times that you want to ship some of your inventory by air, even if it's not profitable, and then the rest by sea, especially if you're out of inventory and you want to start selling your products sooner. Now let's do a quick comparison of air versus sea shipping. The main difference is cost. Shipping by sea is much cheaper, and air typically costs 3 to 5 times as much. But with those lower costs come increased time. Shipping by sea can take 25 to 35 days, and by air, only 4 to 7 days. And keep in mind, these don't take into account any amount of time that you may need to get your products cleared through customs, which is usually only a few days. Now, when it comes to complexity, air is actually simpler since it bypasses many of the seaports and all the regulations that are involved when shipping products through a seaport. However, we let our freight forwarder handle all those details so we never have to worry about them. And while it is possible to have your supplier coordinate shipping all the way from their plant to Amazon, like we mentioned earlier, we highly recommend using a freight forwarder to make sure that everything goes right on your shipments. Now, since we've already mentioned them several times, let's talk a little bit about freight forwarders. Importing products is an entire industry and it's filled with rules and regulations. And a simple mistake can be incredibly costly. We have heard of some people who filled out some wrong forms or didn't file something in time, and they had to dispose of an entire shipment. That is definitely the exception, not the rule, but it's just an example of how a simple mistake can really cost your business if you don't know what you're doing. Now, the solution to that is to hire a freight forwarder. A freight forwarder is a company that specializes in importing products, and they can handle both air and sea shipments. Their costs are also built into your shipping costs, and they're usually very affordable. Building a relationship with a freight forwarder can be invaluable to your business, and it's definitely helped me grow my businesses to where they are today. And some freight forwarders also provide other services, such as warehousing, inspection and prepping services, and, like we talked about in the previous lesson, forwarding your products onto Amazon. As you can tell, we highly recommend using a freight forwarder for your inventory shipments, preferably one who can also warehouse your products if necessary. This is even more important now that some sellers, but not all, will be affected by the inventory storage limits that we talked about in the previous lesson. If you want to find a good solid list of known and trusted freight forwarders, definitely check out the Private Resource Vault. Now, once your products have been imported, they still need to get to Amazon. And if you're having them shipped to yourself, well, you can do the rest. You can inspect them, you can set up shipping inside of Seller Central, you can print out the UPS or FedEx labels, attach them, and then have them picked up and shipped off to Amazon all by yourself. But what if you can't do this? For example, you don't live in the country. Or what if you simply don't want to? Well, the safest way to accomplish this is to use a service called an inspection and forwarding service. An inspection and forwarding service is a company that can do the following: arrange pickup of your inventory from the port warehouse, bring it back to their own warehouse for inspection and labeling, plus any necessary prep work you might have, and then print out the labels and ship them off to Amazon using Amazon's own UPS and FedEx partnership. Now, keep in mind, many freight forwarders can now do all of this as well. Be sure to ask them because it will simplify the process if they're able to do any of these services that you need. And we have a list of known and trusted inspection and forwarding services in the Private Resource Vault. If you're at all confused about the differences between a freight forwarder and an inspection and forwarding service, that's totally fine. Let's talk about the differences right now. A freight forwarder's main job is to get your products imported from your supplier's country and into the country that they'll be sold in. An inspection and forwarding service's main job is to inspect the products once they arrive and then get them prepped and shipped off to Amazon. Most freight forwarders can now do both jobs, but their inspection services will be limited because their specialty is importing. However, if you just want a cursory look at your products to make sure there's no visible damage, you can talk with your freight forwarder, and many times they'll do this just as a part of their normal service. However, if you need a more detailed inspection, that's when you'd want to hire an inspection and forwarding service. They can not only do inspections, but they can also do additional prep work such as labeling, polybagging, or anything else that you might need before your products are sent off to Amazon. Once you're ready to place your order, you'll want to contact a freight forwarder or use the Freightos tool in order to get a shipping quote. And the importation checklist below this lesson will tell you exactly what you need in order to get that. And it includes things such as the shipment details you get from your supplier, such as the quantity, the dimensions, the weight, the type of product, and the cost, the origination, which is your supplier's warehouse address, and the final destination, which is either you, your inspection and forwarding service warehouse, or maybe even Amazon, your company or personal information, and then any other services that you want performed, such as inspection, labeling, or forwarding on to Amazon. And one thing we ask you to keep in mind is that while freight forwarders are awesome, we highly recommend them and they definitely want your business, please be respectful of their time since it can be very time consuming to keep putting together multiple shipping quotes for you. Getting one or two is absolutely no problem, but if you feel like you really need more than that, I recommend using the Freightos tool to look at different shipping scenarios over and over again. Now, once you decide on a freight forwarder, they'll set you up with an account and ask for a lot of different things, such as a signed power of attorney, and this is just for clearing your products through customs, a customs form 5106, which is used in the USA, and an EORI form that's used in European countries only. They might ask you for a deposit if your shipping costs are going to be very expensive. They'll want some company or personal details, and then they'll want you to sign up for either a continuous or a single entry bond application, and they'll walk you through every single one of these items. And once again, the importation checklist below also has all this information listed out on it. Now let's do a quick overview of the entire shipping process. You place your order with your supplier. You have a freight forwarder contact your supplier in order to arrange shipment, either by air or by sea. Your supplier completes their manufacturing, and then your inventory ships out. The inventory then arrives at the airport or seaport. The freight forwarder handles all customs clearing and notifies you when the inventory is finally cleared and available. The inventory is then sent to you, your inspection service, or to your freight forwarder's own warehouse for labeling and then forwarding on to Amazon. At that point, you create the shipment labels inside of Seller Central, and we'll cover that later, and you have them printed out and attached to your inventory cartons. And then UPS or FedEx picks up the inventory and delivers them straight to Amazon FBA. That's all there is to it. Now, keep in mind, I highlighted this right here, the creation of the shipment labels inside of Seller Central, because you really don't need to do this until your products have been manufactured and until they've been imported. But once your products are in the country you're selling in, this is when you really need to go in and create those shipment labels inside of Seller Central so that UPS and FedEx can then pick them up. Now, there are two common shipping questions that we get asked all the time. The first is, can I just ship my product straight from my overseas supplier to Amazon? Now, for your first shipment, we highly recommend not doing this. You want someone, whether it's you, an inspection service, your freight forwarder, to see your shipment before it goes to Amazon, because Amazon has very strict requirements for receiving shipments from overseas, and you risk having your shipment declined by Amazon's receiving department. There's just too much risk involved, and you don't yet know if your supplier can really do everything they need to do in order to label and ship the products completely the right way in order to get them accepted by Amazon. However, once you are comfortable with your supplier and shipper, you can consider this as long as you make sure they know exactly what to do. Now, the second question is, can I just use my supplier's own shipping service and not even hire a freight forwarder? Again, for your first shipment, we highly recommend not doing this. A lot of times when a supplier will give you a shipping quote, it only includes the exact price of shipping and not all the other fees and costs are involved with it and that you will have to end up paying. And sometimes suppliers only provide shipping to the port or airport and require you to then figure out how to go and pick it up from there, which, trust me, it is not easy and sometimes not even possible to do. However, we have seen some members do this successfully when the cost of their merchandise is less than $2,500 and they're having it shipped to their home first. If you do decide to do this, keep in mind that you must be willing to accept the risk of losing your inventory if something does go wrong. Here's what we covered in this lesson. We learned the difference between domestic and international shipping. We did a quick overview of the entire importing process. We learned how to run this business from anywhere in the world. We learned the difference between air and sea shipping and how to decide which is right for us. We learned about freight forwarders and inspection services. And then we did another overview again of the entire shipping process. And coming up, we're going to learn how to place your very first inventory order. So head on over to the next lesson, and I'll see you there.